Oh boy. This week's episode of Demon Slayer was rather, what is the word? Polyamorous? Yeah. So we'll talk about Tengen's wives in a second, but this episode of Demon Slayer was actually really good, and I actually want to hear what you guys think down in the comments below, what you thought about this episode specifically, because last week, we had the 40-minute, grand episode that was actually really funny, and this week, reintroducing a little bit of the dramatic elements to the show. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, but let's go ahead and get right into the episode. So last week's episode, we were really introduced to Tengen Uzui. This week, it seems we are, I guess, introduced to elements of his personality with this episode. We get to know him a little bit better. We learned that Tengen Uzui, he says himself he's a god, which is really funny. And Tanjiro's like, well, what exactly are you a god of? And so he replies, like, pretty much immediately, and he says, well, he's the god of glam and flash, the god of festivals. And, well, Inosuke has to chime in on this. He says he is the god of mountains. And I love Tengen because Tengen, we saw it last week with the Taisho Secret. Tengen is just, he's like, you're weird. And that's what I love about Tengen's dynamic with these three already, is that Tengen kind of has a response like to everybody. He kind of treats Zenitsu and Tanjiro sort of relatively normally, but then he's just completely weirded out by Inosuke, and it's hilarious. It's one of the best jokes so far of this season. I love it. I absolutely adore it. But Zenitsu, the best part about this is he's like, you guys are just acting pretty similar. Like, why are you guys being the same? Because, Tengen's like, oh, I'm the god of this. And Inosuke's like, I'm the god of this too. And it's just, oh my God. It was just a really good scene. I really laughed out loud at this one. But we end the scene with a demonstration once again of how quick Tengen Uzui is. This guy just immediately just snaps right out of existence, seemingly. It's like he's using the instant transmission. It's just insane speed this guy has, and plus, he's a former ninja, so it makes sense why that is. Though, what I like so far about this season is the ways that they're building up the world of Demon Slayer. I don't know if this was mentioned in season 1, probably was, but just for the sake of this video, I think it's worth repeating. But the wisteria flowers and the crest of like a place means that Demon Slayer, or just people from the Demon Slayer core in general, will be able to receive help from that establishment for free. No questions asked. If they ask something, they'll be able to get it from them, and we see Tengen take advantage of this pretty much almost immediately. I mean, Tengen is so far just a very charismatic and unique character, to say the least, just like really a lot of the characters in this show so far. That's the one thing that this show has going for it, is that the characters, pretty much all of them, are charismatic and extremely likable in their own ways, and if they're not extremely likable, they have, well, very extreme personalities. They're all kind of, honestly, I think they're all kind of crazy in their own way, and I think that's really what makes them stand out so much. I mean, for example, Tengen is like, yo, let's keep an eye out on these women for me to marry. And Zenitsu just immediately, the most absurd faces. He thinks Tengen is, well, just being absurd. He doesn't want Tengen to use the Demon Slayer core as this dating service, so to speak. But it's actually revealed that, well, that's not exactly the case. Tengen actually sent his wives in on a mission, and he hasn't heard back from his 3 wives. Which leaves the question, 3? I mean, 1's enough, right? But then you have 2, and then somewhere you get 2, and then you decide, I think I need a 3rd one. I mean, what exactly do these, 3 ladies have to offer? Not only that, but what does Tengen have to offer to where 3 women would agree to be in a polyamorous relationship? These are the real questions. But since they're all going into the entertainment district arc, they need a cover, which is something that I think is a thing with Rengoku as well. It seems like all the Demon Slayers and the Hashira especially need some sort of cover in the series. It's a nice little theme that they keep going with, and I quite enjoy it. The disguise this time, though, is not a bento vendor. It's just to, I guess, dress Zenitsu, Tanjiro, and Inosuke up as women and individually sell them off in the entertainment district. We'll get to that later, though. So we learn that actually Tengen's wives are actually very talented. They're actually very important because his wives are actually kunoichi ninjas, and they're all 3 of them are in separate places, which is why they need 3 separate disguises, because each each of them have to go into to find Suma, Makio, and Hinatsura. Respectively, they are located in Tokito, Ogimoto, and House Kyogoku, respectfully. So it's actually very important that they do this, and as well, like, he hasn't heard from them in a while, so he doesn't really know what's happening with them, if they're in danger or whatever, if they're hurt. We learn a little bit about each of the districts of the entertainment district, I guess is how I would explain this. We learned about Yoshiwara. This is kind of like the town of the night. This is where everybody goes for desire, love, you know, those things. And then we learned about Hanamachi Entertainment District, which is where most of the courtesans are sold, or were sold into by, you know, debt or poverty or whatever. And a lot of the women there want a wealthy man to come and buy their freedom and all this stuff. And if you actually don't know what a courtesan is, it is basically a female prostitute, pretty much. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that word here on YouTube, but that's essentially what they are. It's actually in past times, it's actually a pretty interesting job, because a lot of people think courtesan, they immediately think money for sex, which is not the whole case. Courtesans are interesting, and they're kind of different than just your normal, well, prostitutes. They have to learn skills to become basically the perfect woman for a wealthy man. So things like dancing, art, and art's a really big one, you know, language, things like that, beauty as well. They have to have beauty and wealth. So these courtesans are actually just like really interesting people that are very talented, and they've come up through the rankings. And I think the highest rank they said in this episode was an Oiran, which is above everybody else. They have wealth, beauty, artistry, all of that stuff. And actually men compete for these high-ranking courtesans. And it's just a really interesting, I think, historical look back at this era, because I think a lot of people, you know, they probably don't even know what the word courtesan is or what it really means beyond just, oh, they, you know, you give money, they have sex with you. It actually was back then, at least in this proposed time era, just a really important job that was really essential for many places like these entertainment district, like red light district places, I suppose. Just a really cool, I don't know, interesting touch. More you know. So the boys, they go undercover as women. Zenitsu goes under the name Zenko, Sumiko is Tanjiro, and Inoko is, of course, Inosuke. And Tanjiro immediately gets hired. I actually really like Tanjiro's character throughout most of this episode. He actually cleans up pretty nicely, but not only that, he's actually really depended on because he's an honest, hardworking individual. So those traits, since he's just so honest and who he is naturally, those traits actually work out really well in this job of being a courtesan, and they actually quite like him, even though they don't know that, well, he's a girl. So yeah, just interesting, I think. It's also important to know that the person who buys Tanjiro is the madam of the house of Ogimoto. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So she's basically going to take Tanjiro in. As we see, it actually kind of works out in their favor. The disguises, even though they are so awful, so bad, actually work out somehow against all odds. Like all three of them, they go to their respective houses that they're going to try to undercover and infiltrate. They all like them, like each of them. Like for example, Zenitsu is like really ugly, but he can play the shamisen. Shamisen? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Zen, I love Zenitsu's whole character through this. Like one of the madams is like, yes, that one wants to get back at the one who sold him. So we will praise her. She has potential yet. And I love that because it then flashes back to Tengen selling Zenitsu for nothing, just literally giving Zenitsu away. And so he's really angry about that. I really like these parts of Zenitsu's character because it's just, I don't know, it's just really works with his character style. Other things, you know, I still think he's one of the more annoying characters, but he's kind of growing into it at least a little bit. Like I said before, Tanjiro is just, they are very impressed by her strength, of course. We actually learned that a lot of things, because two of the girls actually end up gossiping. Apparently, someone from Kyogoku fell from a window and died. And some of the girls have actually disappeared too without paying some of their debt. And they use a specific phrase. I forget the phrase what they said in the episode. But either way, it's pretty much made to seem seem like it's one of the demons got them, but in reality, of course, that is not what's going on here. Something a little bit more complicated has gone on. And the reason I think that is really just because they found one of this girl's diary, and Tanjiro figures out that the story that she put in this diary of running away and all this stuff, planning to run away and get away, seems to have been some sort of cover, or at least, at the very least, written by somebody trying to make this seem more like a cover-up as the demons got her, or at least trying to make it seem like the demons got to her as a cover. If so, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way she wanted to play this. So the final scene of the episode is actually really interesting. Tengen can't really sense demons going on down there, so that must mean to me that this demon has some sort of way to suppress his or her powers. I think it's her because it's the one we saw at the trailer. I think people are calling her Daki or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but this demon seems to be somewhat powerful. I imagine since previous demons have a lot of really interesting and unique abilities. We, look back at Enmu, for example. Very unique, interesting ability. Maybe this new demon's power is the ability to conceal and maybe play a little bit stealthy. If that is the case, then I would also imagine he or she, well, I'm going to still think it's a she. We'll just keep referring her to she at this point. I still think she is probably a really quick person in battle, and if that is the case, then that could be a perfect match for Tengen Uzui. We saw early in the episode and previous episodes as an example that Tengen Uzui is a very, very fast character. Of course, he's a ninja, but as well, it also makes me wonder, how really powerful will this demon be? Because not only is it seemingly so far, if my theory is correct, that this demon is very fast and very good at concealing, this demon is probably going to be unlike anything we've ever seen so far in Demon Slayer, and that has me really excited. I think a lot of people as well in the comments have been really expressing oh, are they going to introduce Tengen or just a Hashira every season to have them killed off? Well, I think based off the last couple episodes, and I very much could be wrong, I just don't think they're going to kill Tengen. So far, it seems like, especially with his ties of having 3 wives, and obviously, we see Makio. We haven't even got to her yet. Her introduction, might as well just get to it. Her introduction is just really quick. A really, really cool introduction. Honestly, for setting up the next episode, she's, everybody's gonna waifu this girl. And pretty much his other 2 wives. I'm assuming the 3 wives were the girls in the opening song. So if that is the case, they're swole anime girls they're just jacked to the gills. Of course, people are gonna like these girls. Makio as well, obviously, is being held captive by what I could only presume is Daki. And if that is the case, then where is Suma, Makio, and Hinatsuda? If we don't know where they are, we can only presume that they have been captive, right? But as well, the dialogue is really interesting here. She talks about these letters and who were they sent to. So I'm assuming that she's in this position just essentially because of these letters, but as well, why is she trying to figure this out? It makes me think then, well, maybe Makio wasn't exactly as sneaky as she could have been with these letters, and, well, she found them. And if that is the case, then are the other people compromised at this point? What exactly was in this letter? Were these letters what they were gossiping about earlier exactly, or were there something else that is hidden in them? Either way, this is a very interesting episode. I want to hear your thoughts on seeing at least our first glimpses of Makio, but as well, this mysterious demon lady and where she's going. I assume she's a demon lady, I think, just looking at the way Makio is tied up. Very stylishly tied up, by the way. There are definitely many ways to tie people up, usually with, just rope, but she has a certain artistry with tying people up. We'll just say that. But yeah, tell me your guys' thoughts on Makio, what your theories are for the next episode of Demon Slayer. This is pretty good. I really enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.